Hello, everyone, and welcome to episode 3 of the From a Certain Point of View podcast. And this is the Revenge of the Sith episode. If you're keeping track of the Star Wars movies, I am Josh,
I'm Adam.
and wow, what a week in Star Wars
I'm
this
spent.
week.
I'm spent, dude.
Yeah, I am in Star Wars and nerd heaven this week, with everything
Yeah,
that's kind of come out with from the
I
Mandalorian
know.
to Jedi Fallen Order and Disney Plus and
It's been
um,
so much. I feel like I need a death stick.
you want to go home and rethink your life.
I do.
Um, so Adam, what have you been watching and reading and playing in Star Wars
Oh my
this week?
gosh, there's such a laundry list. So I've been listening to Resistance Reborn, and I think we're going to talk about that more next week.
Yeah, I would put a
Yeah,
pin in that one a little bit.
yeah, let's do that. And then Disney Plus came out, so holy crap.
Hmm.
I've been watching Clone Wars, started Rebels again, Mandalorian, of course, and then Fallen Order. It's just been nonstop Star Wars 24/7 this whole week.
Yeah, I think I feel like the argument that we were getting too much Star Wars when Solo came out, and that I don't think that really holds too much weight in my opinion.
Not right now.
Um,
I mean,
because I think when you have really good Star Wars content and things that
right,
people are
right.
interested in, I think that you can get a lot of Star Wars at one time and it be fine. Um, so that's my
Yeah,
my opinion on that.
yeah,
Um,
definitely. So, what about you? What have you been getting into?
Pretty much the same stuff.
Yeah,
Watched the Mandalorian. I watched the first episode a couple times, and I was glad that we were able to get together and watch it together.
yeah,
And
it's fun. It's fun doing that. Like I know some people don't like the one episode a week cadence,
right,
but
mhm.
I love it.
Yeah, me too, actually.
I'm tired of binging stuff, and it's nice because you can do something like we did the other night where we can get some buds together and actually
Hmm.
watch a show, and then it's a community driven thing again, instead of just sitting at home and plowing through a whole season in a weekend, you know?
Yeah, I don't feel like you can have as many conversations about shows that you binge watch in the way that
Right.
you can with this format. I completely agree. I think it's great just to have that one episode a week and you have a whole week to kind of talk about it and get ready for the next one.
Yeah.
Um, and that anticipation and everything. So, yeah,
Yeah.
while there are some shows that I certainly like to binge, I do like to have this type of experience too.
Yeah. Definitely.
So yeah, definitely been watching The Mandalorian. I've been playing a little bit of Jedi Fallen Order, got it yesterday, and just we'll talk more about that, but it's amazing.
Yep.
And also just really checking out Disney Plus. And to my it was a welcome surprise, and I wasn't expecting this at all to find out that all the Star Wars movies were kind of remastered or however you want to say it in 4K,
Oh yeah.
or
Yeah.
transfer. They had 4K transfers.
Hmm.
So you had some Dolby Vision, some Dolby Atmos if you have those technologies and everything in your home theater system. Really, really cool stuff. Like I
Yeah.
was watching Rogue One a little bit, and I could literally see the individual raindrops on Krennic's jacket in the beginning of
Oh
the
my
movie,
gosh.
which was just crazy. And even Brittany, who normally doesn't notice those types of things, like she can't tell the difference sometimes between like Blu-ray and 4K and all that. She
Yeah.
was like, "Wow, I noticed that too." So
Nice.
yeah, so
Nice.
I was really happy to see that.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
So I've been checking out Disney Plus a lot too. It has, as far as Star Wars content go, like focusing specifically on that because we can get lost in all the other stuff.
Right.
Everything I could wish for as a Star Wars fan, except we have to wait a little bit longer for Solo and Last Jedi
Right.
to
Because
finish up their Netflix run.
Netflix run. Yeah.
Yeah, but everything I could wish for. The only complaint that I have so far is that it doesn't seem to remember where I leave off if I'm watching a TV series. I
Yeah,
don't know if you've
I
noticed that.
thought that's where you were going with that, and I
Yeah.
had the same complaint. Like, why
Yeah, that's
doesn't this realize
really
where I left off and pick
yeah,
up
like
there?
that's really annoying for me to have to
Yeah, I'm hoping
remember.
they fix that in an update or
I
something.
hope so too. And I
Yeah.
wanted to mention one thing that I saw this week, a link from IGN,
Okay.
and I'll put this in the show notes too. But they put together, and I don't know if this came from somewhere else and they just kind of reported on it. That could be. But anyway, I saw it at IGN, and it was a chronological list to watch the Clone Wars. And so if you don't know much or haven't watched the Clone Wars before, it's
Hmm.
not actually totally in chronological order. So this list shows you from start to finish, earliest in the timeline to latest in the timeline, where all these episodes fall, which I thought was a really neat thing, and I might try watching them in that order this watch through. So
Yeah, thanks for sharing that because I actually didn't realize that. And
right,
Clone Wars, I've watched bits and pieces. I watched the first season and most of the second season.
mm,
Watched kind of the lost episodes towards the end, but I haven't really gone through and watched all of them. So I might have to reference that and go through in that order. So that's definitely helpful.
cool. So that's our week in Star Wars, I guess. You ready for news?
Yeah, let's hit the cue for the news for this week, Adam.
Well, you want the bad news or the really bad news?
Okay, so our first news article for this week comes from comingsoon.net, and the headline reads JJ Abrams credits Ryan Johnson for daring approach on Rise of Skywalker. I pulled some quotes from JJ Abrams from this article that I thought were pretty interesting and something that we could talk about a little bit because I think, a lot of people, if they have complaints about episode 7, The Force Awakens, it's that it, sometimes looks like a carbon copy of A New Hope, and I think that was very intentional, and there was a reason behind that. But
Yeah,
basically, what
definitely.
what what JJ's saying here is, and his quote is, in episode 7, I was adhering to a kind of approach that felt right for Star Wars in my head. It was about finding a visual language, like shooting on locations, doing practical things as much as possible, and we continue that in episode 9. But I also found myself doing things that I'm not sure I would have been doing, or I'm not sure I would have been as daring to do in episode 7. And then he goes on to say, Ryan helped remind me that that's why we're on these movies, not to just do something that you've seen before. I won't say that I felt constrained or limited on 7, but I found myself wanting to do something that felt more consistent with the original trilogy than not. And on 9, I found myself feeling like I'm just going to go for it a bit more. So, what are your thoughts on these quotes? That's a lot of stuff that he said there, but what's your reaction to that, Adam?
I think that it's pretty obvious that 7 had to be the way that it was, and
Yeah.
I enjoyed that aspect of it.
Hmm.
I think for the general public, you have to remember that coming into 7, there was some negative connotations about what a Star Wars movie was going to be because of how the prequels went.
Yes.
And I think not just for JJ, but I think from a Disney and Lucasfilm perspective, it kind of had to be the way that it was.
Hmm.
And I could see where that, and he said that he didn't want to say that it was limiting, but I could see how that could be limiting.
Sure.
And once you've started to tell some of those stories, whether or not Ryan Johnson did what he did, I think going into JJ's second movie, regardless of that, I think that he would have been more, felt a little more free to do different things.
Hmm. Yeah, and I feel like this didn't just come from JJ. I think it came from up top, Bob Iger, Kathleen
Sure.
Kennedy. I think they were very, very well aware of, and if we go back to 2014, there were still a lot of people that were not happy with the prequels and
Yeah.
didn't want to see that repeated again. They, didn't want to see like, you
Yeah.
know,
And not just that, but there were people that were unhappy with it being a Disney property at that point too.
yeah,
So I think
yeah,
that there was also an element of, we got to show that this is still Star Wars. This isn't a Mickey Mouse cartoon. We
right.
have to show everyone that this is still what you remember.
Hmm. So I think the intention was definitely to make it feel more like the original trilogy and even
Hmm.
to echo a lot of things that happened in the original trilogy, just so you get everybody, because at that point it had been 10 years since the last Star Wars film was
Right.
released. So you want to get people back into it, feel that nostalgia. And I think episode 7 succeeded so much in getting everybody back on board again. I mean, it was at that point in time the highest grossing film, in the US and everything of all time. So, I think it definitely did exactly what it set out to do. And then naturally you're going to progress the story and push the boundaries and those types of things. I guess one other thing I wanted to say about the Force Awakens, when people kind of make those complaints about it being too similar to A New Hope, I think if we look back at episode 1, George Lucas himself did this, where he repeated a lot of the same beats. And if you compare it to even Return of the Jedi, where at the end of the movie you had the lightsaber duel going on, you had the ground battle going on, you had the
Right.
space battle going on. There's those familiar kind of echoes that happen in Star Wars.
Yeah, definitely.
But I would say, based on JJ's quote, very excited to see where he takes episode 9. I think it's going to be very different, very fresh. I think it's going to be, like the article kind of says, kind of a more daring approach to the storytelling, and I don't think it's going to feel like any other Star Wars movie necessarily.
Yeah, we'll see. I don't know if you saw this, but Daisy Ridley commented on episode 9 so far, and she used a couple adjectives, and a few that I remember were like scary, sad, but still there was a couple positive ones in there too. So
Yeah,
yeah,
I did see some of that. Definitely excited about episode 9 and where it all goes.
sure. And the other news topic that we have this week is it's not news, it's a rumor, but we wanted to talk about this just to cover it because it's out there.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know how many places reported on this. I personally saw it on WeGotThisCovered.com.
Yeah, which I think is notorious for, doing
tabloid type stuff.
clickbait articles. Yeah.
Yeah. So they say that George Lucas was brought in by Disney after multiple test screenings of Rise of Skywalker to fix the movie, quote unquote, fix the movie.
Right.
Josh, tell us about George Lucas fixing Star Wars.
Well, I don't know, man, what to say about this, because I definitely have opinions about this. I mean, I think this is all driving the narrative that's out there that Disney has, and they've ruined the sequel trilogy, they've ruined Star Wars, and it needs fixing and everything like that, where I don't hold that opinion at all. I love the sequels, and I love them for what they are. Force Awakens and The Last Jedi are both in my top 5 Star Wars movies of all time, and movies that I would go back and watch, over and over again. So I don't. First of all, I don't think that any of these movies need fixing, and definitely not Episode 9. And I also just don't think that they would be doing test screenings of the ending of the movie, and then it being a disaster and bringing George Lucas in to fix it. I mean, I can see George Lucas being, I know JJ consulted with George to talk to him about Star Wars and the nature of the Force and everything like that, but I think that is what his role is limited to at this point.
I would tend to agree. I don't think that George Lucas would be brought in to do anything, like you said, more than consulting. So I don't know if you remember this from a few weeks ago, but Bob Iger was talking about George Lucas and about how he was very, I don't want to say displeased, but he was maybe a little disappointed with how Force Awakens came off, and even Last Jedi. And those aren't things that you would say about someone if you had brought them in to fix your multi-million-dollar mega movie that you're depending on. So if he was brought in to fix that, you'd be singing his praises, and you wouldn't be saying, well, he was unhappy with how this all went down. That's not something you would do.
Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah, I didn't really look at it that way. So I'm glad you brought that that point up. And
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, I think that this is just absolute BS.
Yeah.
And, you know, just
It's poodoo.
clickbait trying to drive a certain narrative
It's
and
it's
those
all
types of.
it's all bantha poodoo.
It is Bantapudu.
So on that note, how about we get into some reviews?
All right, let's do it.
My disappointment in your performance cannot be overstated.
Okay, so for reviews this week, we've got three main things we want to talk about. First is going to be Jedi Fallen Order, and then we're going to get into Mandalorian, both episodes, and there will be spoilers in that discussion a little bit later on. So we'll remind you again when we get there, but just warning you now. So Fallen Order, we want to kind of make this a review in progress, I guess, because I'm only about maybe 3 to 4 hours in, and I think Josh is like in the 1 to 2 range.
Yeah, I'm probably about 1 or 2 hours in. Yeah.
Yeah, so we can't really give you a whole overarching idea about how the whole game is yet, but we can at least give you some gameplay reviews and things of that nature. So, well, starting off, I just want to say that opening sequence was incredible. As far as the cinematics and the storytelling right off the bat, it
Yeah.
just pulled you right in. The whole scene with Prof and how that all falls out, it just immediately pulls you in. I don't know how you felt about it, but man, I
I
was hooked right
I
then.
couldn't agree. I couldn't agree more. I mean, I think this is just great Star Wars storytelling going
Yeah.
on, and how cinematic this game is, and the cutscenes are great. And you know, it just feels so. It has Star Wars DNA all over it. You know, it feels like just great Star Wars storytelling. So I am in love with it so far.
Yeah, there are games where you get to the cutscenes and you're just like, all right, let's just get back to the game type thing. But man, I'm actually excited when the cutscenes come up because it's almost like a sit back and enjoy the movie type feeling.
Absolutely. Yeah,
Yeah,
I'm as excited to see those scenes, or even more excited than I am just like
I know. And
playing some of the time. You know.
yeah, like when I actually get to a cutscene, it's like, yes, I'm ready for this.
Hmm.
Give me some good stuff. And none of
Definitely.
the cutscenes so far have just not disappointed. It's been almost for me one after another. Not really, not always surprise moments, but just the lore that's already in there, the characters that have shown up,
Yeah, I mean,
everything.
and the connections to stuff that's in canon, you know, stuff
Hmm.
that's in everything is great.
Yeah. So now gameplay. This is more of a Metroidvania style game, and if you're not familiar with that term in gaming, it falls along the lines of some of the old Metroid games, Castlevania type thing, where
Hmm.
you have a big map, but you have to go back and forth in this map, unlocking things as you go, and as you gain skills and abilities, you can access new areas. So it's not so much linear as you're going through level 1 to level 10 type thing. You're doing this in stages. You're visiting planets, going back and forth, gaining abilities, and then once you do that, you can go back to old planets and get into different areas, unlock different secrets, things of that nature. So it follows that style of game. And along with that, I have to touch on like the save points because I think we've become used to games saving as you go.
Hmm.
This does something very different. Well, not different. It's kind of expected for that style of game. There's only certain save points that you can get to, and there are times where the game does autosave, but for the most part, you have to rely on those save points. With the understanding that if you go too long without saving, you're going to die and you're going to end up doing a lot of stuff all over again. So
Right.
keep that in mind. I think that's just something that goes along with this style of game, and I don't mind it. I was prepared for that.
Hmm.
But I think some people might not be, and it might be a little jarring. So just kind of be ready for that aspect of it when you get into it if you haven't already. The lightsaber combat for me so far is really good. The parrying is a little tough to master the timing on so far, at least for me.
Yeah, I've had that same experience. Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, but still, some of the some of the finishing moves that you see are just beautifully animated. Even with the parrying being a little frustrating, the rest of the combat is so satisfying. The way that lightsaber just hits, and the sound, it almost like you just feel that that physicality of it. It's so engrossing for me. I don't know how you feel.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, it just the sound of the lightsaber igniting, just and being able to have a lightsaber. Like I'm used to, playing in Battlefront, and if you got the opportunity to be a hero and get a lightsaber, you maybe have that for like 5 minutes and then you're dead.
Yeah,
So,
yeah,
especially for someone like me who's not great at video games. So for me, being able to wield the lightsaber the whole time and the combat feels really good. I'm still trying to master the parrying and the combat and all that, and I think I'll get
right.
better at it as I go. But I definitely love the feel of it, and the sound effects are very Star Wars, and even the
Yeah, the sound
the
effects.
music
Yeah, I
in
was
it
gonna say
too,
that.
just is great as well. And one of my favorite games is Uncharted, and this game to me feels like Uncharted in Star Wars, which is exactly kind of what I wanted it to be.
Yeah,
So you can run across walls and climb things, and just all those types of things. And there's puzzles to be solved within the game.
hmm
Um, I love that stuff.
yeah, yeah, exactly. And for me, this is kind of rolling up every game that I love, as far as like I said, the Metroid style level progression. There
Hmm.
are Zelda style dungeons and puzzles to solve.
Right.
And then, like you said, you have the platforming, and this is very much Uncharted style
Hmm.
platforming, but
Hmm.
it's still platforming at heart. And it's all of that stuff mashed up, and then you put Star Wars on top. And for me, that is the game I've been waiting for, and I am having a blast with this game.
Yeah, I mean, I think if you're a fan of single player games, that you have a story based game, I think this is the Star Wars game that you've been looking for sure.
Yeah, and so far, the Metacritic reviews and things like that have been pretty positive.
Yeah, very good from what I've
Last I
seen.
saw it was 84, and I'm gonna double check here just in 1 second. But last I saw it was 84, and I only
Hmm.
saw really one popular site doing like a mixed review of it. But so far, it seems across the board, it's getting some pretty good marks.
Yeah, very well received, which is really good news for you need Star Wars to have some things that are well received by fans and to get that positivity going again in Star Wars. So this is, I think, a great thing,
Yeah,
all
yeah,
around.
yeah. So it's still hovering about an 84 on Metacritic, which is
Hmm.
can't be mad with it. I think some people are expecting games nowadays to be like 9 out of 10 is good, and 8.9 and below is bad. But you got to remember, like
Right.
84 is a pretty dang good score
Yeah.
for a game.
Yeah, for sure.
The other aspect of this of Fallen Order that I absolutely love is BD1. He is such a cool, lovable droid,
Oh yeah, absolutely. I just
and
I love the droids. Like when Force Awakens came out, I fell in love with BB-8,
mhm,
and just playing this game for a couple hours, I absolutely love BD-1. I'm with you.
yeah, I want a BD1. Like I
Yeah,
don't
I want one
know,
on my shoulder like at all times.
I don't like I don't know if it's gonna be a toy or like one of those the like the real life BB-8 or R2 that they've come out with.
Right.
But I want a BD-1. He is such a cool little guy.
Yeah, absolutely. Love
Yeah.
it.
And then real quick, I wanted to, and I know you wanted to also, but we should touch on customization. There's a lot of customization you can do in this.
Yeah, definitely. You can change your outfit and
Mhm.
stuff like that. I love the lightsaber customization.
Yeah,
You can kind of work on your lightsaber. You can change things about it, change the hilt. You can change I guess it'd be changing the color of the kyber crystal, basically. I went
right.
with green right now. My options were blue and green, and I went with green. Hopefully, I'll have some more options down the line.
Yeah. Yeah. So the way the customization works on the lightsaber stuff is that you have to find certain lightsaber workbenches.
Mm-hmm.
There's one on your ship, the Mantis, and then it seems like each level has at least one, maybe two, hidden throughout the level. So you just stop at the lightsaber bench, and you, like Josh said, you can customize everything from the kyber crystal color, the blade color, right down to the material that it's made out of. I chose Orange. I'm playing on PC, and I got this on Origin. I did the Origin Access thing, and it came with the Premiere version. So you got a couple different bonus materials and colors that you can do. So I went with Orange and some gold
Yeah,
material for the
if
hilt
I had the
circle.
option of orange, I would definitely go with that. So
Yeah.
I think that's a great
Yeah,
call. I love it.
Yeah, as soon as I saw Orange, I was like, yep, that's it. I'm not going to change it.
Yeah,
So
that's very, very unique.
yeah, and you can
I'm
all
just so excited to keep playing this game, Adam. I don't know about you, but I'm like, I don't remember being this excited about jumping on and playing a video game in a while. So
yeah, it's been a while for me too. I enjoy playing Destiny, and I've kind of got some enjoyment out of Destiny lately, so I've been excited to play that, but not anywhere near the level that I've been excited for this.
absolutely.
Yeah, and real quick before we move on to Mandalorian, just going back to the customization, not only can you customize your lightsaber, but you can customize the color and the appearance of Cal, in what he wears as far as a uniform or a poncho. You can also customize BD1, his color scheme, and you can customize the color scheme of the Mantis. So there's some cool things, and you actually get those in chests, like loot chests, as you go through the level. A lot of them are hidden, so you got to do a lot of exploring, kind of looking down each hallway, each little nook and cranny, see what you can find. Like I said, some of them are locked behind abilities that you have to unlock in the game and then come back to them later. It gives you a reason to keep on visiting these planets and coming back. And I love traveling on the Mantis, like boarding the ship, and then you deal with the holo map.
Yeah,
and you can choose your planet that way, and then it feels like you're taking
kind of
off.
take off, and
then to land,
go into light speed.
Yep, and then to land, you have to go sit in your seat and get ready to land.
Yeah, it's very like seamless.
Yeah, and that's
yep. It feels like you're actually traveling on a ship,
Yeah, and like seamless is a good word for it because there's no loading screens. There's nothing like that. You get in. I'm assuming it does all the loading while you're traveling, and then you just land. It's just one continuous whole story, and it's so well done for me so far.
It is very well done. Yeah. And one thing I almost forgot about, actually, as you were talking about customizing Cal and BD1, I love the relationship between Cal and BD1 and their interactions. And like sometimes Cal, if you hit a certain button, will just kind of check on BD1, be like, "You okay, buddy?" And it just reminded me of the relationship between Luke and R2.
Yeah, definitely.
In a lot of ways, and just I just love that too. I wanted to mention that.
Yeah, and as you go through the game, there are times where Cal and BD1 will just kind of talk back and forth, and I got to one point today where Cal asked BD1, "Do you know any jokes?" And so BD1 kind of tweets at him and does his little thing. Of course, you don't know what he says. But Cal responds to it, and they just kind of have that back and forth banter. It's really, really fun to listen to, and those little auditory clips and cuts from Cal and BD1, they're a lot of fun to listen to. Okay, Mandalorian time. This is gonna be probably the meat of our episode this week, but we're gonna talk about both Mandalorian episodes. We're gonna start with a general discussion of how the show is going so far. We're going to keep that as spoiler free as we can, and then after that we are going to get into some spoiler talk. We'll warn you again right before we do it, but just so you know, just if you haven't watched these yet, listen for that warning, and then you might want to fast forward at that point. So
yeah, Adam, before we get into those spoilers, what are your overall impressions of The Mandalorian so far?
I gotta tell you, this might be my favorite Star Wars show, movie, media, general media of all
Hmm.
time.
Yeah, that's a big statement right there.
It is. But I have loved the first 2 episodes of this show. I love the tone. I love the
Hmm.
feel. I love the settings, the music. Everything about this show so far, I love with zero complaints.
And again, that's a pretty strong first impression, and
It is.
I don't know if I would go as far as you, but I will say
Okay.
that I absolutely love The Mandalorian. I think that they're doing it in all the right ways. I mean, I think
Yeah.
this is a very collaborative thing, and you have Jon Favreau and Dave Filoni that are behind a lot of it, and they're huge Star Wars fans, and they're huge fans of George Lucas and his approach. To me, this feels like it could go right alongside of A New Hope, and it feels very akin to
Yeah.
that world and what we saw in A New Hope.
Yeah, it really does. And I love the attention to detail that they've kind of put into this, because you don't see and they've done this before, so this isn't anything new, but they're paying attention to how the original trilogy felt as far as the technology involved in that trilogy at the time. Nothing looks out of place so far. Everything feels like it fits, which is interesting, because you're going from, the original trilogy was the 70s and 80s, so you're kind of dealing with our view of futuristic technology at that time, which that's definitely changed in the last 20 to 30 years. But you still have that feeling, and they like I said, they've done that before in Force Awakens and all that, so they know how to do that. But I just love all of that feel of the original trilogy is still there.
What they do really well is they take something that might have had a small part in A New Hope or the original trilogy, and they expand on it and just really dive deep into that. Like an Ugnaught character that we
Hmm.
saw in The Empire Strikes Back has a more major role in this story, and we even, and I guess I'll throw up a minor spoiler warning right now, that we see a whole storyline around kind of Jawas,
Yeah,
and
yeah,
them and Jawas having kind of an even bigger role in the second episode. So I just love how it kind of takes sort of like some of those side characters that we see, and really focuses in on them and that story and their stories. So.
I would say that those are probably my main general thoughts so far. Do you have anything else to add before we jump into deep talk?
Yeah, I just think like especially starting with the first episode, I thought it was just a perfect intro. Like I loved how it jumped right into the story. It wasn't like
Yeah,
there was this big introduction to what Mandalorians are, or like a Lord of the Rings type thing where it goes
right.
into, that type of beginning, like a prologue. It was just like A New Hope, jumping right into the action. The Mandalorian is claiming a bounty, and it just jumps right into that. So I love the intro, and I really love the comedy in this show. I think it is very Star Wars. It's not like overt comedy like some of the stuff we saw in The Last Jedi that felt a little bit out of place at times.
Yeah, right,
Um,
right.
I think that it's just real. I don't know how to describe it, but the comedy feels very
It's
Star
a little
Wars.
more subtle. Yeah, it's not
Yeah, it's
quite
more subtle. Yeah.
right. Like Last Jedi, and there was a little. And I don't want to get into that, but some of the comedy was a little in your face type of thing.
Yes. Exactly.
When we talked about the Poe thing with the your mom joke and and all
Right.
that stuff,
Right.
it wasn't that. It's not that type of comedy. It's a little more organic, I guess I want to say.
Mhm. Mhm.
Yeah,
Yeah, I would agree.
but some of the
And
stuff is really just hilarious.
yeah.
Especially in the second episode, I was
Yeah,
laughing a
definitely.
lot, and it
Right.
wasn't anything that was just like slapstick type comedy. It's just funny stuff.
Yeah,
So
and just like
that
situational
was just
type
gonna, yeah,
comedy,
that's exactly what I was gonna say.
you
Yeah.
know. And I'm even thinking specifically about the interactions in the first episode between the Mandalorian and IG-11,
Yeah,
and
right.
we'll get into that a little bit more in our spoiler part of the discussion. But just their interactions were hilarious. Also, aside from the intro of the show and the comedy, I just love the sights and the sounds of this show, and getting some of the even the same sound effects we got in the original trilogy, and hearing those sound effects again, seeing things like land speeders and different droids and stuff like that. I think it just really captures the essence of Star Wars. So
Yeah,
I'm definitely loving this show so far. That's kind of my overall impressions. And one
definitely.
other thing, the score done by is it Ludwig Göransson, I think is his
Sounds
name.
yeah.
Ludwig Göransson, who did he did Creed, and he worked on Black Panther as well. I think he
Mhm.
brings a very unique kind of flavor to the score,
Yeah,
and it doesn't sound typical Star Wars, but it's definitely has its own sound that is really kind of is a nice backdrop for the show.
yeah, it is. And like I said, it's not Star Wars, but it still fits. It's
Hmm.
it's not it's not out of place in the universe at all so far.
Right.
Okay,
So do you want to get into our kind of
let's
more deep spoilery chat of The Mandalorian?
yeah, spoiler time.
Okay, so now we're getting into our spoiler discussion of episodes 1 and 2 of The Mandalorian. And the first episode was just titled Chapter 1.
Yeah.
And so, Adam, do you have any spoiler stuff you'd like to talk about this episode?
Yeah, so I was just gonna kind of take this point by point. So it starts off frozen planet in a bar scene with
Hmm.
Mandalorian chasing down a bounty. I do want to say maybe the one complaint I do have so far, the blue, I forget what his species is, but it's a very different aquatic looking thing. I didn't love
Yeah.
the character was all right.
Hmm.
The voice was a little weird for me.
Right.
It was a little, I don't know, it just wasn't, I guess, what I was expecting as far as a voice out of that type of species. But you know,
Yeah, I think I've heard that same complaint.
yeah,
I didn't take too much issue with that character.
oh, yeah.
Um,
It's not like
I didn't.
it didn't ruin it for me or anything, but it was just
Sure,
a little
sure,
bit,
but if you had a minor kind of complaint,
yeah,
yeah. I think the bar scene, the cantina scene, whatever you want to call it, I think it really sets the tone for the
yeah.
show.
We had
In
our
that,
first dismembering
yeah,
in a new way with a
splitting a guy in half with a
with a
door.
door.
Yeah, that was pretty awesome.
Yeah, yeah,
And so we see, just of kind of a how much of a badass the Mandalorian is, and just what he is willing to do if necessary.
right, right.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then it kind of goes outside. The Mandalorian gets his bounty, and we'll just call him Blue Guy.
Hmm.
And Brian Posehn shows up driving the land speeder.
Is that who that was?
That is, it was Brian Posehn, like a comedian actor,
Yeah, I thought he looked familiar.
very uh, self-proclaimed nerd and loves
Hmm.
this type of stuff. It was really cool to see him. I was it's kind of like that a Buddy the Elf moment for me. Like I know him.
Yeah, yeah. I think there's going to be a lot of cameos in this show. Like,
Yeah,
I want to say that first alien wasn't that like Horatio Sands or something? I heard that.
I
I'm not
heard
sure.
something about Horatio Sands somewhere. Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
so that could be.
Yep. So Brian Posehn shows up. They drives them to the Mandalorian ship, and they get off planet type of thing. Uh,
Hmm.
a pretty cool little scene with the walrus.
Yeah,
His thing there.
right. Whatever that was.
Yep. We see our first Star Wars toilet.
Yeah, the first time he's what did they call it?
Is it a
Called
vac? Is it a vac tube?
I think he either said vac tube or back tube. I think vac tube makes more sense.
Yeah, VacTube
Um,
sounds right. Yeah.
yeah, and even I think just before that, when they're the Mandalorian's trying to take off in the Razor Crest, we hear kind of that sound of the engine failing, which
Hmm.
is the same sound that we heard the Millennium Falcon make when it
Hmm.
wouldn't go into hyperdrive or whatever. So
Yeah.
just things like that I loved.
And being, I guess that this is post, well, it's definitely post Jedi, and then also post Empire Strikes Back. We get a lot of looks at bounties in Carbonite, including
Yes.
Blue Guy eventually.
Right. So it was pretty neat having kind of these mobile carbonite
Yeah,
containment things.
porta
Well, I don't know
Carbonite.
what to call them, but that was pretty cool seeing that.
Yeah, definitely. And then following that, they land on a different looking planet, and I don't know how to describe it. Like the
Hmm.
town is, and the bar, I guess, is very Mos Eisley.
Yeah, it definitely felt that way.
But it's not a desert planet, and I don't know
Right.
quite how to describe it. Like a gray, almost like ash type color.
Yeah, I guess if there was one thing I would want a little bit more of it. I guess it would be to know like what
Where
these
they are.
planets are. What the names of these planets are. If they had
Hmm.
that somehow in the dialogue, and I know you don't want to force that type of thing into the dialogue, but and I don't want some planet name flashing across the screen because like when that happened in Rogue One, it didn't really feel um, or I think it was Rogue One. It
Yeah, it
it
was
didn't
Rogue
really.
One. It happens in Fallen Order too, but
Yeah.
it's a little smaller in the bottom left of the screen. Just kind of tells you what planet it is. I
Yeah, and like
really don't
in
mind
a
that.
video game, I'm okay with it, but
I actually didn't even mind it in Rogue One, to be honest with you. But I would like to
right,
know what these
yeah, I'd still
planets
like to
are.
know, like in some way, what these planets are. But that's just a small complaint I have.
Yeah, yeah, that's fair. So Mandalorian, who is unnamed at this point, minus some possible leaks, spoilers that are out there from a Pedro Pascal interview.
Hmm.
Uh, Unnamed Mandalorian is at the bar and talking to Carl Weathers, and if you can remind me of his character's name, that'd be cool.
Grief Karga.
Nice, yeah. Uh, so he's getting some. So you see some more of the bounty hunter type. I don't want to say lore, but just kind of the way that whole world works, with the fobs, the pucks.
Yeah, the pucks, the
Hmm.
bounty pucks, those were pretty cool, and it
Yeah,
kind of shows a sort of like a hologram image of the bounty or whatever.
right,
Um,
right.
and then even like the money they
The
use and
credits, yeah,
the
the money,
credits
and
and the credits and that and
you
was
get a
pretty
look
neat.
at some of the Mon Calamari credits,
Hmm.
which is kind of neat, seeing the different credits from across the galaxy, which is interesting because we've dealt with Republic credits
Republic
before,
credits, yeah.
and we've dealt with the Empire credits, and you can kind of see that those are very quickly losing their value post fall of the Empire.
Yeah, I like how the
Yes.
Mandalorian kind of reminds Grief. He's like, you do know the Empire is gone, right?
Yeah.
So
Yeah. Right.
clearly he has had some run-ins with the Empire, and I have kind of some theories about the Empire and Mandalore and what
Okay.
happened with
Okay.
that.
So following that, just to kind of keep everyone up to date, Mandalorian is told by Grief that there is a valuable bounty on the table, but it's very secretive. You have to deal directly with the client themselves.
Hmm.
So the Mandalorian goes to literally almost like a hole in the wall type place. You see the little eye droid. I'm not quite sure what they're actually called,
Yeah, I
but you
love
see
that because it was
those
straight out of
at the
Return of the Jedi.
yep from Jabba's
Jabba's
palace.
palace.
Yeah.
Hmm.
So he steps into a room filled with four dingy-looking stormtroopers.
Yeah,
Their
they're not looking
helmets
too
are
good.
all, their armor's all beat up, helmets are beat up, type of thing. why don't you take this scene?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
So we have the character's name is the Client. Actually, if I looked that up,
Yeah,
played
right.
by
Yeah.
Werner Herzog, or
Who-
however you say his name.
Who has not watched anything Star Wars, but he likes wrestling.
Yeah, fair enough. So, he kind of talks about this particular bounty, and that it's they prefer it to be alive, but they will accept it dead as well. But just kind of talking about the natural order of things being restored, and he kind of alludes to some different things, and then we see some Beskar steel, I believe, with an the seal of the Empire is on it,
right.
which I thought was pretty interesting and pretty
Yeah.
telling, because in the episode the Great Purge is mentioned.
Mhm.
And I don't think that's talking about Order 66 necessarily. I think that's talking about maybe the Empire actually kind of took over Mandalore.
Yeah, so I actually looked this up
Mhm.
as far as the Beskar
Yeah.
goes. And Wikipedia, which is a wonderful resource for everything Star Wars,
Yes, it is.
to give you the rundown on the history. So Beskar is a very rare but very valuable type of armor that
Mhm.
is very strong. It can deflect even glancing lightsaber blows, things like that.
Right.
So very strong, very sturdy, but also very rare and very expensive.
Mhm.
A lot of Mandalorians, because of that, have opted to go for things like Dora Steel type armor, which what Django and Boba both have opted to go with.
Okay. Gotcha.
The Empire actually mined off a ton of Beskar from Mandalore. So
Mhm.
since the Empire, it has become even more rare and more valuable.
Right.
So what the Client is really offering here is priceless, I guess, to someone of that culture, or even as the Mandalorian describes it in episode 2, religion,
Yes.
tribal type thing.
Yeah, and I'm guessing that the amount of Beskar steel he would get would, be a full suit of armor pretty much for the Mandalorian, and
Yeah,
and maybe even getting it back to some of the other Mandalorians that maybe
right.
are still in existence.
Yeah, and like you said, restoring it to its natural
Right.
owner. Or
So that
natural
leads me
place.
to believe that, the Empire definitely, like, in some way took over something happened to the Mandalorian homeworld, I think, or to the people
Yeah,
at the hands of the Empire. So
yeah. And the Doctor, I guess we got to talk about that because there's been some interesting things coming out around the Doctor. Apparently, he wears a Camino patch on
right.
his right sleeve.
Yes, which would lead us to believe that maybe he's involved in cloning somehow or something like that.
Yeah, and I have some theories on that, but we'll get into that later.
Yeah.
So the Client gives the Mandalorian the bounty, but it's a very limited information, and
Mhm.
like in the last 4 digits of the ID number or whatever that what do they
Right.
call that, and we find out that this bounty is aged 50 years,
Yes.
which is okay, cool. Mandalorian obviously accepts the bounty once he sees the Beskar steel, and then he takes it to the armorer. Real quick before we get into the armorer,
Mhm.
in the background of one of these shots, you can see a Mandalorian that looks reminiscent of Boba Fett. Okay,
Right. Yeah.
Josh, what do you think, Boba or not?
I mean, I don't think it's necessarily Boba Fett. I mean, I think it might just be like a little nod to Boba Fett and something that's kind of cool in the background that you can look for. That's just what it is, exactly what it's doing, which is just having people talk about it. I can't confirm or deny that that's Boba Fett, but I lean towards it not being Boba Fett. But
Okay,
um,
I will
yeah.
flat out deny that it's not Boba Fett.
Fair enough.
I don't think that it's Boba Fett at all. The armor doesn't look
Right.
exact. The color scheme is a little bit like you said. I think it's purposely reminiscent of Boba Fett.
Hmm.
However, a lot of Mandalorian armor looks similar.
Yeah, I mean, it could very well just be showing that, hey, this is where some Mandalorians hang out still and get their armor and stuff like that. So.
Right. And all we know about Boba Fett is that he was in the Sarlacc pit.
Yeah.
It very well could still be. He's not
right. He could
confirmed
be
dead,
being,
but he's also not
digested over 1,000 years, you know.
But he's also not confirmed alive either.
Right.
In
So
the
we don't really know.
Aftermath trilogy, Cobb Vanth was the character name, but he did find a Mandalorian, a set of Mandalorian armor, which, you know, I guess
Right.
we were told is Boba's, right?
Mm-hmm.
However, it's also at that point, since it was in a Sarlacc pit, it's also kind of mangled and, you know, partially digested type of thing. So the armor somehow made it out of the pit. Possibly, we can presume that maybe Boba Fett made it out of the pit. If that's the case, that's not how you reintroduce Boba Fett.
No, it would definitely
you don't sneak him into the background of a shot.
No,
he gets a big reveal.
Yeah, for sure.
And the other point that I've read, and I think it's a valid point, this armory is very Mandalorian. This is a place for Mandalorians.
Which Boba Fett is not a Mandalorian.
Right, exactly.
Mm-hmm.
So Boba Fett
wears
being
the
allowed
armor, but
he's adopted that armor, but he's not Mandalorian. So having him allowed in this place is maybe a stretch.
Yeah, that's a good point.
So I will flat out say not Boba Fett, but we can move on at that point.
All right. Yeah, I'm definitely leaning towards your angle on it. So
yeah. So armory. The Mandalorian goes, visits the armor, hands over the Beskar steel that he got from the client that's melted down, and he gets his first piece of armor.
Yeah, I thought this was a really neat scene, and really stood out to me in this scene. You know, obviously it was cool that he got that, you know, that piece of armor and everything to replace the shoulder armor that was shot earlier in the episode. I think it was really cool, the flashback scene where we kind of see, you know, at some point we see him as a child, and maybe it's during the Clone Wars, possibly, or not really sure. There's some kind of conflict going on, and I'm guessing he was kind of orphaned in some way, which is, when we get to the end of the episode, it makes more sense, the connection he has
right, because
with the character that's revealed at the end.
Yeah, definitely, and it was mentioned in that scene he was a foundling. So yeah, is
you
know, your point about being orphaned is you know, probably pretty much on the mark.
Right.
So he takes off, and we land on a planet is kind of barren and maybe kind of looks like someplace we've been before. But like you said, we don't know anything about these planets, but it does kind of look like Tatooine.
Yeah, I really want it to be Tatooine. I mean, as he was flying into the planet, like just the look of the planet, I was like, oh, that looks a lot like Tatooine, and even some of the kind of the creatures and things that we see in the second episode lead me to believe that this could be Tatooine.
Yeah, and at that point he meets up with kind of a chance happening with your Ugnaught character that you mentioned before.
I love this Ugnaught. You know, I was calling him Ugnulty instead of Ugnaught because Nick Nolte plays this character. And, which I love this character. I think his actual name is like, how do you pronounce? Do you know how to pronounce it, Adam?
Was it? I think it's Quill.
Quill, maybe.
Yeah, I think it's Quill.
I think it's like Kuiil or something like that is the spelling. So let's call him Quill or Ugnulty, either way. And I just love his line, "I have spoken." You know, he says something and then says, "I have spoken."
And that's it. I love it. That's the period on the sentence right there. I love it.
Yeah. So again, seeing a character that, you know, had a role in The Empire Strikes Back with the whole, you know, carbonite thing on Bespin, but him having a bigger role in this show is something that Jon Favreau has done, and I love that. And for some reason, the scene between the Mandalorian and Quill and the little kind of hut thing, it reminded me of Luke's first meeting with Obi-Wan or Luke's meeting with Yoda. It just kind of had that feel to me, and kind of this mystery, this kind of mysterious character. So I enjoyed that.
Yeah, definitely. So Quill and the Mandalorian to go through some training exercises. He learns how to ride, all that stuff.
Yes, and we're immediately transported into a Rocky or Creed movie.
Pretty much, yeah. But getting past all that, the Mandalorian at that point goes out to find his bounty, and this is where we meet up with IG-11, bounty hunter droid, who
And
I
that whole
gotta
scene was
say,
awesome.
I immediately fell in love with IG-11, and then regretted it a little bit later.
Yeah, I mean, let's talk about when we were in love with
Yeah,
IG-11,
let's
which
start
is
there.
him
Take
constantly wanting to self-destruct.
I know. So this is a droid voiced by Taika. I don't know if I'm pronouncing that
Taika
right.
Waititi.
Taika Waititi. There you go.
hmm
Yeah, I loved everything about IG-11. His immediate because by the book type of by by the code type of character. The bounty
hmm
hunter code can't be caught, so every time things look rough, he's going to
He's like,
self-destruct.
I'm gonna self-destruct.
And
The Mandalorian's like, no, stop it.
I know
Cut that out.
it's kind of a great balancing scene for the Mandalorian. He's trying to accomplish this, and he has to work with a droid, which he sounds like he doesn't have a good affinity with droids.
Right.
Because he's not excited to
Yeah,
see
he's not a
a
fan of
droid.
droids or the Empire.
But kind of has to team up with IG-11 because they get ambushed.
hmm
And it was kind of a fun balancing scene for him to have to deal with that and then work with the droid, and then the droid wants to just give up the whole time.
Right.
So it's a really fun scene for
Yeah, it
first
was.
episode. Yeah.
Yeah.
So wrapping the first episode up, they make it. They make it past the ambush. They get inside a room. Which is where the bounty is located, and they get to they get to a tiny white repulsor type pod, a ball.
hmm
Open this thing up, and we see our first glimpse at a baby Yoda. I mean, come on,
Are we calling him a yodeling?
a yodeling. I'm fine with that.
Yodeling.
I love Yoda. Yeah,
Yodeling.
just the most.
Yeah, my mind was blown
adorable.
by this.
I know. Mine was too. I've said this in a couple chats. There haven't been very many shows lately that actually physically make me drop my jaw. In one
Yeah,
of
like it was
those,
a very surprising moment. Like I
one of
did
those
not see that
moments.
coming.
I was floored by that. I wasn't expecting that at all.
No. And this yodeling is 50 years old.
50 years old because they age differently, like
'cause,
IG-11 says, and we
yeah,
know
they
that
age
Yoda was
differently.
900 years old.
Right.
So it's 50 years old, but still looks in its infancy.
hmm
It's just adorable, and I
Oh
need
yeah,
I need to have one. I don't.
Right. I want one of those too. I
If they
need a
don't,
BD1, a
yeah,
yodeling.
if they don't, merchandise that thing somehow, they're stupid because that thing will
Agreed.
sell hands over fist.
Oh, for sure. For sure.
So IG-11 has been sent there to kill this thing.
hmm
The Mandalorian's directives were kind of opposite.
Yeah.
Bring it back alive, but the client said proof of death is also acceptable.
Acceptable, right.
But IG-11 has very different orders because he's there to terminate it,
hmm
and because of that, he gets a hole in the head.
That's right. So I thought it was very significant, the Mandalorian's choice to not kill the yodeling. And I think it, again, kind of goes back to him seeing this creature as an orphan and him being an orphan himself, and just spares the life of the yodeling,
Yeah.
as we're calling it.
Yeah, and we can look at this as that was his directive, but I don't know I don't think that that's fully it.
No, I think there was a definite connection, and as he just kind of reaches his hand out and they almost kind of touch hands there. I think there's a definite connection. I think there's more to it than him just following the order he was given.
So IG-11 gets literally shot through the head. IG-11, I guess, is done at this point. He hasn't reappeared yet after episode 2.
Which was pretty surprising. I mean, I didn't think he would go out that quickly.
Yeah, and it leads me to wonder if he comes back somehow. I don't know if that droid gets rebuilt or if maybe a different IG droid comes along.
Right.
I could see either of those happening, I guess.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was just it was all very sudden because we had this Baby Yoda reveal, and then immediately after that, G11 is dropped.
Yeah, so there are definitely a couple surprises at the end of episode 1. And I guess my main question at the end was, why do they want the Baby Yoda, the yodeling, whatever you want to call it? And it comes back to that question of, is it because these, and we don't know a lot about this species at all, and we do know they age differently. So is it, to try to figure out having unnatural long life? Does it have to do with cloning, and does it have to do with these this type of creatures being sensitive in the Force? And what kind of is this about experimentation? What's going to come out of this? So I guess those were kind of my questions at the end of this episode.
Yeah, definitely. So moving into episode 2, we start off back on on Tatooine with where the Mandalorian was. He's walking kind of through a pit and gets ambushed again. And I think this is important because this seems to be another set of bounty hunters that are again after yodeling, right?
Yeah, it seems like there are multiple, bounty hunters that are trying to get the yodeling for sure.
Yeah, so Mandalorian kind of lays waste to them. We get the first look of what his rifle can do.
Yeah,
which is basically total annihilation.
yeah, it disintegrates its enemies pretty much. So.
Yeah, pretty cool. And then we get a really endearing scene with Mandalorian and yodeling. Mandalorian's hurt after the ambush. He's kind of patching himself up. We see yodeling reach out to him.
Yeah.
And you get the feeling something is about to happen.
I feel like he was going to try to heal him.
I agree. Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. So yeah, yodeling tries to reach out and definitely looks like he's trying to heal Mandalorian at that point.
That's how I took it.
But Mandalorian doesn't know what's happening. So it's this really cute scene where yodeling keeps getting out of the repulsor crib, we'll call it.
Right. I don't know what to call it. That's a good name for it. But I just love how the whole episode, like this little yodeling is just following him around everywhere.
Yeah. He's just kind of
it's like he's babysitting, and it's just this awesome dynamic.
Yeah, so yodeling keeps getting out of the I guess we'll just call it repulsor crib. Let's go with it.
Yeah,
and
he keeps trying to put him
back in. It's kind of this fun little parenting moment where you keep putting the kid back in the crib type of thing.
Right.
And,
right.
It's a really nice little in between scene, but also kind of foreshadowing things that are to come. With how yodeling is reaching out. So moving on, Mandalorian gets back to his ship, and this is where we're introduced with some little guys. Jawas make their entrance.
Yes, the return of the Jawas.
Yeah, and I dare say they kind of steal the show.
Oh yeah, for sure, and it's another reason why I thought maybe this is Tatooine. And I mean, of course, Jawas can probably exist on another planet, but I mean, I feel like, man, there was the Jawas, the big sand crawler, all those things made me think that this is Tatooine. But the Jawas definitely stole the show and stole all the parts from the Razor Crest as well.
They tore apart the Razor Crest. They didn't just steal things. There was it was missing its outer plating. It was just gutted.
Yeah.
You think about a car left like in Detroit or something, and you come back and it's up on blocks. This was worse. This
was far worse.
There was nothing left of this ship. They tore it apart.
Right. So understandably, he wants to disintegrate a few Jawas here and there and take a few out.
We get the Mandalorian kind of goes back to Quill and asks for some help. Quill agrees, but it's not really what the Mandalorian wants. The Mandalorian just wants to get his stuff back, and Quill kind of reminds him, you have to You have to trade with them. They're not going to just give
Yeah.
it back. You got to
Right.
give them something now. So, which I'm sure sits really well with the Mandalorian. He has to give up something to get his own stuff back.
Right. Yeah. He's not too much of a fan of that.
Yeah. So they both go and we meet up with the Jawas, and there's kind of a funny exchange there where they're translating back and forth.
Mm-hmm.
And Mandalorian shows off his Jawa skills, which aren't
Like
great.
you sound like a Wookiee. You speak terrible Java. That was hilarious.
Yeah, it was really good. So after haggling a bit back and forth, the Jawas kind of maybe want the yodeling, or they want some other stuff. They decide on an egg.
They want an egg.
Which is wonderful. It's just hilarious.
And they just keep chanting egg, and however you say it in Jawa. Yeah.
Suka or something like that. It was, yeah.
Yeah.
So Mandalorian has to go get an egg back, and it's kind of the climactic scene of the episode where he has to fight. Is that a reek?
I don't know if that is or not. It might be. I'll have to look into that. I'm not sure if it was a little bit different. It could be, or it might not be.
Yeah, I'd have to check on it too. But yeah, he has to fight. He has to fight this creature. It's like a rhinoceros-looking creature. He's getting his butt kicked.
Yeah.
Until
it was a rough day for the Mandalorian in this episode. It was just everything was kind of going wrong for him, and just he's getting beat up.
Just when it's about to come to a head, a Mandalorian looks like he's getting ready for almost like his last stand. I guess he's tried everything. He tried the flamethrower. He's tried the cable. Nothing has worked, and he gets out.
It's like some kind of small dagger knife.
Yeah, and it seems like he's squaring up for his last stand. The creature makes a charge at him, and then yodeling steps in. And
what he's been trying to do the whole episode.
You have the foreshadowing from before. He puts his hand out, and that rhino thing gets lifted off the ground, and the Mandalorian's able to turn the fight at that point, kill it, and get the egg.
Yeah, and this was just amazing to me, and I don't know why I didn't really see it coming, but I had this question in my mind well before the Mandalorian came out. Like, is this show going to have the Force in it, or is there going to be elements of the Force? I didn't think we would see like any Jedi or anything like that. And I guess I was very surprised to see, and it was a welcome surprise that the Force made its appearance in this show, because I didn't know if we were going to see that or not.
I don't know. I don't know that I wasn't expecting it. I think I was actually really expecting the yodeling to be strong in the Force. Maybe I was a little surprised that reveal came already.
Right.
But I think for me, I was really expecting that to be the major part of the story. For me, where I think that this is heading, where I hope this is heading, I really want to see some more insight into that species.
For sure. Like, we could get a name of the species and like where they, how they come about, where they come from, those types of things.
We've only seen in canon right now 2 characters of that species, Yoda and Yaddle. Both are Jedi Masters, so both are very strong in the Force. So our only 2 examples are 2 for 2 in being very strong in the Force.
Right.
So where I would really like to see this head is that we find out that species in itself is very rare and very strong in the Force.
Yeah.
Which we've already seen. This infant yodeling is able to do things that Luke couldn't do at his age.
Right.
In an infancy stage, it just has that natural affinity to do that.
Obviously, the yodeling's midichlorian count is very high.
It is. It's off the charts. So I would like to see it head in that direction, but then that would also make sense why so many people would be after this baby if they know it exists. And it also would
Right.
make sense why the Kaminoan doctor, or the doctor that has some affiliation with Kamino,
Hmm.
would want that along with the Empire. Get that thing back alive so they can
Right.
alter it, clone it, however, program it, however they would want. Get
Sure. Yeah. See.
that type of DNA into a cloned uh, Yoda ish species,
Hmm.
and if if you could make an army of those things,
Right. Exactly. Yeah. So you got to wonder how that's all going to play into the story, and it
right?
leaves me with so many questions. Like, is this yodeling an offspring of, you know, Yoda? I don't know about that.
I don't know about that.
Is
I
it just
hope not, to be honest.
right? I kind of hope not. Is this, just, I don't know how it came to be. Is this, we know that in Rebels there was the world between worlds and there was an element of
Hmm.
time travel. Is this actually the baby version of Yoda? I think that's a theory that's out there and a question that's out there, and
Could be.
I don't
I
think that's necessarily it either.
Yeah,
But
I hope not too.
um, there's some big questions that come from this reveal, and like, what do
Hmm.
they want to use the yodeling for? Again, is it for unnatural long life? Is it for
Right.
force abilities? Is this, and I even had this question of, is this somehow tied into Project Luminous? Um,
Oh, nice. Okay.
that's gonna be coming out. There's gonna be some novels and stuff like that.
Right.
This Project Luminous title, and it, I think one of the taglines of that whole thing was, um, the Force is what gives a Jedi its power, blah blah blah, until now. Um, so are they? Is it tied into that where they can actually create the force abilities or the force with this creature or something like that? I have no idea.
Yeah.
These are just wild
Oh
speculation
yeah.
and wild
Yeah,
theories
for
that I have
sure.
running through.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I
So
saw someone in a different chat that I was in today mention that they think that this would be the cornerstone for the future of Star Wars storytelling, for the
right.
foreseeable future, which
Yeah.
I'm totally on board with that.
Yeah, I
You
can
know,
definitely see that.
we don't have a Yoda type creature anymore. Yoda is dead at this point.
Right.
If this
Right.
becomes the new canon version of a young Yoda that we can
Mhm.
see progress through storytelling for another 800 years in Star Wars time,
Yeah.
I'm
Right.
totally on board with that.
Yeah, that'd be really interesting for
Right.
sure. I would definitely like to see that. And the other question is this somehow going to tie into the Rise of Skywalker at all? Is it going to tie into how
Uh-huh.
Palpatine and how he was brought back, or whatever?
Yep.
I don't know. I'm not sure if they're going to go that far with tying that together, but we'll see.
Yeah. Yeah. We'll see at that point. I mean,
Hmm.
at that point, yodeling would be about 75 years old.
Right.
I've seen. I haven't seen this on my own, but I've seen that Yoda was about 100 when he became a Jedi Master.
Hmm.
So you're kind of approaching that age, which would be kind of
Yeah.
interesting because in my mind, between infancy and becoming a Jedi Master, you'd be in that teenage years sort of frame. So if we do see him in Episode 9, he might, or he or she might be, almost kind of like we saw Luke when he was in A New Hope. It's kind of that age.
Right. Yeah. So
So
there's
kind of coming into
a lot
stride
of
with what that character will be. But that's, like you said, that's all speculation. That's a lot of stuff to do in a movie that has to wrap up a lot of other things. So
yeah. I don't know if we'll see yodeling in Episode 9, but I do
right,
wonder
right,
if what the Empire gets from this, is it somehow tied into that. And again, I don't, it's kind of a leap. I don't know if they'll connect the canon in that way or not, but it'd be cool if they did somehow
right,
tie it
right.
together. A lot of possibilities, a lot of
Sure.
questions.
And the one other thing that I've thought about, like you said, a connection to the Empire, a connection to Palpatine. The other thing I could see is that the Empire wants this baby so badly for its genetics,
Mm-hmm.
to keep Palpatine alive,
Right.
type of thing.
Right.
That
Yeah.
longevity of life that Palpatine is looking for to be around, like a forever
That
type of
could
thing.
be. I like that theory.
So
Yeah.
yeah, so not looking so much to clone him, but looking to
Mm-hmm.
use that DNA somehow to extend someone's
To
life.
extend. Yeah. Yeah. I could see that, and that would be awesome if it tied in that way.
Yeah. So that kind of wraps up Mandalorian episodes 1 and 2 as far as the storyline goes. Anything else to add, Josh?
I would just say again that I'm very impressed with the Mandalorian so far. I love what I've seen. My only complaint, and we've talked about this, is just the length of the episodes being a little on the short side. I kind of expected, it's Star Wars. It's our first live action Star Wars, so naturally I just want more of it.
Sure.
But what we've gotten has been great and left me wanting more, which is what you want a show to do. So I can't complain too much. But I wouldn't mind seeing the episode length being a little bit longer,
Yeah,
just because I want more of it.
yeah, I would like it to be a little bit longer too. But for me, it's I wouldn't complain if it was another 15, 20 minutes longer.
Yeah.
But they're telling a story so far that I am totally invested in, that I love,
Oh, absolutely.
and
Yeah.
I can't complain too much, I guess, about that. So I know that's a
Right.
major complaint out there right now with a lot
Mm-hmm.
of people, and I totally understand that. I can't fault anybody for wanting more of this. But for me, from my own point of view, uh,
Mm-hmm.
it's more like I am loving what I'm getting right now. So I'm happy with that, I guess.
Absolutely. Yeah, and I can definitely agree with that. And it's been quite a week for Star Wars, and we went really deep this episode, probably longer than our typical episode length, but I think we had a lot of Star Wars to digest this week and to talk about. So
Yeah, definitely.
I'm just glad you're here. At the end.
Okay. Well, that was a lot to talk about with reviews, but a lot of great discussion there. Mandalorian is looking great. I know I'm very excited for next week. I'm sure you are too, Josh.
oh yeah, I can't wait to see what happens next in this story.
Yeah, so next week we'll be talking about Mandalorian episode 3, definitely. We'll be talking a little bit more about Resistance Reborn and Fallen Order as well, so make sure you come back next week to check all that out. In the meantime, remember that the website is up and ready. There's a couple blog posts on there right now, and I'm sure we'll be adding some more very soon. So make sure you hit up the website from a certain point of view.com. You can also find our links there to Facebook and Twitter, as well as anywhere you might want to listen to the show, iTunes, Google Play, and Spotify. We also recently added Pocket Casts, if anybody is interested in listening on Pocket Casts. And last but not least, remember that we also have our Discord server, and we'll include links for that every week in our show notes. There will always be links to the Facebook page, to the website, and also to the Discord server. In there, we also have a spoiler chat, so if you want to talk about Mandalorian right after you watch it, you can always head into our spoiler chat in Discord and feel free to say anything there. There's no worries about spoiling it for anybody. Just jump right in and you can say anything you want about any episode you've seen so far. So remember to check out all of that. And other than that, I am about ready to wrap it up. What about you, Josh?
Yeah, I mean, I think we would love to hear from you guys as well, just like Adam said, talking about the different ways that you can view our content. And we would love to hear from you in any of the comment sections, whether it's on Facebook or Twitter or in the Discord chat. We would just love to hear from you guys and interact with you guys that are listening out there.
Yep, 100% agreed. So with that, let's wrap it up. I have spoken.
And the Force will be with you.
Always.